Yeah.
The Broncos.
Yeah, so always good. We're all doing something with our lives post-graduation, thankfully.
Well,
Yeah.
the Broncos. Speak for yourselves.
Let's see. YouTube Creator Studio. No, it's not made for kids.
We've
Catch.
got some folks on with us already.
Yeah, I don't know. They're here early. And if you are here early, welcome. Let us know where you're calling in from today. We always like to know where the origin stories of folks are. And we'll get started a little bit past the top of the hour here. Irvine, California. Welcome from Irvine. We'll have a trickle more of people, and hopefully I will also get people coming in here shortly. Calling in from India, currently in Auckland, New Zealand. All right. We are a little bit more international these days too, thankfully.
I've also noticed that a good amount of my subscribers for my channel, Albert, are in India and
Yeah.
Africa, which is kind of surprising.
Oh yeah, where do you find that? I want to know where mine are from.
I forget what button I was clicking at when I was looking at my analytics.
If I
Um,
look at content here, no. I did notice the other day though that um what was it? Uh what was it? That 6% of my videos come from ChatGPT. 6% of my video traffic.
Oh.
from ChatGPT? That's
Yep.
Yeah,
interesting.
ChatGPT driven traffic is a much bigger thing now.
Huh.
Yeah. So um yeah.
What are they searching to find you? Like, I need to find a job. Is
Yeah.
there a
Uh
Facebook group that does this or something?
maybe, but I don't know. Potentially, I mean,
That's the crazy thing is like I don't know how you optimize for like being
Yeah.
found through ChatGPT. A lot of people are getting traffic through it, but how do you get ChatGPT,
So
to
is
yeah.
actually put you in there?
ChatGPT giving people links now?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay, okay. I've been using more Gemini, and Gemini doesn't have any links.
Yeah.
Yeah, 74% of my audience is 25 to 34 years old. Oh, top geographies over the last year. 32% US, 7% India, 2% Canada, 1% in the UK, and 0.7 in Germany. Okay.
So you're mostly US, which makes sense given your audience from Facebook. But
Yep. All right, well, everybody, hello, welcome. You are here for mock interview number 129. We're just about to get started here. If you're here early, let us know where you're dialing in from. We're gonna wait until the 5 minute mark after the hour here. And let me see if I can find a
You sound like a radio host, Albert.
let's launch a poll. Yes, I can very much be a radio host. Yeah, I've been doing this for 5 years, so you
Let's
know.
start at five after the hour.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean. I've done at least, I think, 500 Albert's List webinars over the last 5 years at this point. So
Wow.
I got to go back and count, but yeah, yeah. So yeah. So what we do is, right, we ask everybody to come in here, network, share your LinkedIn. But the most exciting part is where everybody is dialing in from. And so we get people, and I like to call it a where's where of where I'd like to take my next vacation, because you get your Southern California folks, you get people in Germany in the middle of the night, you get people in Melbourne, Australia. And so there are 11 of you here, so let us know where you are dialing in from. We'd love to know. Not because we're going to come visit, but just because we like to share the diversity of the audience here. And then we also have how confident are you of your interview skills? 13%. I don't even know how to answer the question. Tell me about yourself. 88%. I am okay, and that's why I am here. Bum, 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 bum. All right. Everybody just kind of hanging out here. Okay.
There's a fellow Corey in the house.
There is a fellow Corey. Oh, is there a fellow Corey in the house? Oh, okay. All right.
Corey M.
Corey yeah. And I know Scott's dialing in from Australia here because he's been here before. Oh, from Auckland and Melbourne. All right. You are on both sides of the ocean tonight. So good. And Minnesota. All right, we have Minnesota.
Exotic Minnesota.
Exotic Minnesota. Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna get this thing started and then we're gonna get some more people in the room, I think. I'm gonna go send some reminder emails. All right, so let me go ahead and hit record on this side just so that I can record to this computer too.
And I think hopefully I can do it at the same time you are.
Okay.
Hopefully.
All right. All right, everybody. Hello and welcome. You are here for mock interview number 129. It's always good to be back with my good friend Corey of careershakers.com, our career consultancy, and he's been helping me with these mock interviews since the beginning of the pandemic, March of 2020. And
Oh,
with me is also another good friend, Armand Domaluski, who I've known for
hey.
at least a decade and a half now, and he's a data analyst. And we're here doing a wonderful mock interview today as Armand seeks his next job. If this is your first time here, welcome. If this is not your first time here and you've been here before, you know how this works. And how this works is that Armand has sent in his resume and also a job description. Corey has prepared some questions, and Corey will ask those questions and give feedback. And all of you get to learn along the way. And if you have any questions along the way as well, and you want to put Armand in the hot seat with a question that you've thought up of yourself, go for it. So without further ado, Corey, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. But first of all, let's give our brave volunteer Armand a round of applause for putting himself up there for your education and entertainment purposes today. And data analyst roles are one of the more popular job positions these days. But the positions I feel like don't come up very often. So I think a lot of people are going to get to benefit from the practice today. And for those of you who are wondering, we can always send over, we'll be flipping back and forth between the job description and Armand's resume. But this is Armand's background, which he'll walk us through in a second. And today we're going to be practicing a pretty interesting job description. It's a senior data analyst slash data modeler job description for a company called Ngrok. This is the first time I think I've seen one specifically called out as like a data modeler position. I think most companies might liken this or call this like a business intelligence role, like a little bit more on the back end side of the data analyst realm. But this is the job description that we're going to be practicing today. And before I get roasted in the comments and the chat, I do not have a technical background. I am not a data analyst, so we will not be doing any SQL or Python coding testing today. It'll be more on the client management, business analyst type questions than it is on the technical side. So no coding will be done today. And before we get into the interview, we always want to give Armand a platform to introduce himself to the audience in a non-interview setting, and then you can talk about your background as well and some of the jobs you're looking for, companies and industries. And that way, if anyone watching now or watching the recording later has a job opportunity for you, please they can reach out and connect you with someone in their network. So Armand, the floor is yours if you want to give a brief introduction.
Cool. My name is Armand. I've been working as a data analyst in a variety of capacities since college, really in 2013. I studied economics, focused on econometrics, really fascinated by diving into data, figuring out sort of like as a detective problems in the data, delivering insights from it. I worked in the beginning of my career in politics. So I worked as an economic analyst, but also doing a variety of data roles for political campaigns, and transitioned to the tech sector, working from a Resistance Labs was sort of a tech political job, which then allowed me to transition to Calvert College, which was the first online community college in California. And then most recently, I worked at Palo Alto Networks, which is a very large cybersecurity corporation. I did uh, data analysis for them, focusing on partnerships. And now I'm looking for the next thing. And I'm largely, I would say, interested in doing data analysis or operational roles that allow me to dig into data and solve problems using data, at tech companies. I'm really interested in AI, but in general, I would say like startup space. I'm less focused on the industry as I am focused on sort of the work itself, which is like really, you know, doing data analysis, solving interesting and tough problems, and working with a good team of high performing people who are excited about their work. But um, yeah,
Excellent. So if anyone has opportunities for Armand, please reach out to him. And then it seems like you're open to both like business analyst, data analyst, as well as
Mhm.
business intelligence roles as well.
That's right.
Awesome. Okay, now I'm going to stop sharing so you don't see any of my interview questions. So those of you who are wondering how it's going to work is this, we're going to treat this as if it's a real interview. So in a moment, I'm going to put on my interviewer hat. I will ask him a question that I created based on the job description and his background. So if you do volunteer here, we always create customized questions for every single person. We don't do the same questions every time. And it's going to be based on your background because maybe you're doing a career switch or something like that. So we try to pivot based on what each person wants to practice. And then he'll give his answer. I usually won't jump in or give hints or anything like that because we want to treat it like a real interview. But because this is practice, if you want to read the script, you want to look at your notes, you want to test some of your answers, no problem because this is all practice. And then at the end of
Cool.
each question, I'll give some interview feedback, things that went well, and then areas of potential improvement. And that way, for those of you who aren't interviewing for a data analyst role, maybe you can still learn things based on how Armand answers questions and how you can structure your answers, how long they should be, what key points you need to talk about. That way, you can still apply those for your upcoming interviews. So, Armand, are you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with a nice warm-up question, a classic. So thank you so much for applying to this senior data analyst and modeler role here at Ngrok. What do you know about this role, and how do you think your experience best matches this position?
So I know that the role is focused on a variety of things related to data analysis and data modeling. The data analysis work is focused on sort of looking at the product analytics, how the product is performing, the variety of both usage metrics, utilization metrics, and then data modeling is sort of creating a variety of data models that allow us to extract raw data, transform that data, and then create predictions for future data using that data. I'm really excited about the opportunity to work there because I think one, the company is doing really interesting things in the space of sort of developer platforms. Ngrok's been around for a long time, specifically allowing developers to host platforms, but allowing developers basically to self-host. But now they're going further than that for expanding to a broader all-in-one developer platform space. And I think it's an interesting inflection moment. Um, and I think that my skill set, with working at Palo Alto Networks, Calvert College, and just like a long career as a data analyst, really prepares me for it because I've solved really difficult problems involving a lot of complex and messy data, working cross-functionally across like product, finance, sales operations. And I think at a startup that is really at an inflection point, it's going to be a really critical skill of having in-depth data analysis skills, but also being able to work in a rapid cross-functional way.
Excellent. Okay. And then if you had to rate your SQL skills on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you self-rate yourself currently today?
And I I know it sounds a little arrogant, but I mean I don't mean to, but I've been doing SQL since college. I do it every day. It's something I'm very confident in.
And so, what makes you feel so confident that you're a 10 out of 10 and you don't feel like there's nothing more to learn for SQL? What are some of the things that you typically use in your job?
Yeah. So I guess I wouldn't phrase this, there's nothing more to learn. There's always more to learn. I can always grow more. What I mean by that is just that I'm very comfortable doing it every single day and then learning more quickly as new things approach. So, for example, at my previous job, I used SQL and DBT to build a discount pricing model, building complex queries using CTEs, just nested queries, but also understanding the efficiency concerns. And so, when to remove a nested query, when to use indexes instead, basically how to optimize the SQL queries. Um, and I built discount pricing models, customer churn models, product analytic models that were able to map to customer performance and satisfaction, all using SQL and a variety of SQL platforms. And so I'm confident in my ability to do it because I've been doing it for a long time, but I'm also confident in my ability to continuously learn more about it.
Perfect. Cool. So we'll go into the feedback section now. So I think that was a very, very solid answer. So this is a different twist on like the tell me about yourself, walk me through your
Yeah.
resume, why should we hire you type role. I did a combination just because I felt like Armand is more at the advanced level. So I did a combination of what do you know about the job plus tell me about yourself, right? And then with that, what the ideal answer is basically what Armand had talked about is number one, you give an overall breakdown of the role. If you've already talked to a recruiter, for example, first, and now you're talking to the hiring manager, hopefully you got additional context about the position beyond what's in the job description. Now, if you didn't talk to a recruiter first, and this is the first recruiter call, do exactly what Armand did, which is break down in this case, the two subcomponents of the role, right? There's the data analyst, business analyst focused portion of it, and then there's also the back end modeling part of it. And then after that, you now need to talk about what you've done historically in the past that makes you the best fit for this role. And here is where ideally you want to use as many keywords from the job description as possible. Now, in this case, Amon has not supported a product or engineering team, right? You were mostly on, I think it's sales and marketing at Palo Alto Networks. Is that right? And partnerships?
I worked with product engineering and GTM, but I was mostly on sales. Yeah.
Okay. But if you have, that's a great thing to point out, right? Like you could
Yeah.
say, I know that
Okay.
I'm going to be partnering closely with product and engineering teams. And similarly, I work with those teams at Palo Alto Networks. And then, of course, you also want to talk about the things that they care about, right? So you can say, and I use a lot of SQL in my role. We also use a lot of Power BI, DBT, right? And then you can talk about some of the tools if you have worked with the ones specifically that you know that this company uses. And again, if you talk to the recruiter, they may tell you, yeah, mostly you'll be using Looker. We don't really
Yeah.
use, Mode or Superset that much. The hiring manager doesn't care. So that's some of the background information you can get before the interview if possible. But then try to use as many of these keywords as you can and then draw those connections, just like you did actually, Armand, towards the end, right? When I
Mm,
had you explain why 10 out of 10 for SQL, that's actually when you gave me a lot of good examples to
mm,
demonstrate how good you are at your job, right? You told me how you were building complex data models, et cetera, et cetera. Use that instead of saying, "Oh, I've partnered with teams before. I know how to, communicate findings, et cetera." That was a little too high level and broad. Instead,
yeah.
use the examples to then show that you have those skill sets, right? And
Sure.
then one other thing for anyone who's doing data analyst type positions is whenever you talk about your SQL or Python or Excel or Power BI skills, right? The best way to show that you are really good at that is to talk about some of the complex queries and functions. So Armand talked about like nested functions and indexes, and then there's also like window functions and things like that, right? So the more advanced techniques that you can talk about will also show them that you're really good at your job instead of just saying, yeah, yeah, I'm good at SQL. Like, trust me.
Right.
So also do what Armand did, which is talk about the complex data sets, how you have to use like nested and a bunch of other complex functions. Okay. Any questions on that high level question and introductory question?
No?
Okay, cool. And then also just make sure you're talking about any time you built data models at
Mhm.
in the past, like a very short example would be super good because that's one thing they're also going to be listening for as well, right?
Right. Well, I mentioned was the mentioning of sort of the discount model and the customer churn model, did I not explain that well or
Oh no, no, you did, but that was after I prompted you, right? So,
got it. Okay.
right, because you want that to be because it's half the role. Well, as far as we know, it's half the role, right?
Right.
So,
Okay. Makes sense.
cool. Okay, let's get into the more tricky one. Um, Can you tell me about the most impactful or helpful dashboard that you've built for your business partners? And what did you learn as you built that and got feedback?
Yeah. So when I started Pelto Networks, my team ecosystems touched around 10 to 12 different dashboards. Towards the end of my term there, ended up touching about like 20 to 25. And so I undertook a project. It was getting incredibly disparate. It was hard to manage. People were using different data definitions. And when we were transitioning to Tableau, I took that as an opportunity to sort of convert all of this into a singular, unified ecosystems dashboard that could serve everybody from the executive level down to individual channel business managers. That dashboard integrated something like 120 plus KPIs, served both like had a variety of complicated tabs. It was a project of about took about 6 months to a year, and I worked very closely with engineering, business stakeholders, sales operations to make sure that we both had a clear plan to engage about what data sources need to be transitioned. I sketched out the models of how it would look like to work with stakeholders, make sure that they understood the sort of the vision of it and were on board of how it would look. Then worked with IT closely to actually do the migration, do the transition of the building, tested all the data, validated all the data, they did another round of stakeholder engagement towards the end before rolling it out, and then doing a variety of trainings over the course of time, building documentation to sustain that, and then using that training process to also gather feedback for future iterations. Um, it was a huge success. We got enormous amounts of positive feedback from uh, executive leadership, so chief partnerships officer, all of her direct reports, multiple SVPs. And it's really the biggest sort of mark of success is that the utilization is very high. We actually had something like, if I don't remember correctly, 800 plus users by the end of it. And it drove multiple roadmap pivots. And so it's actually being utilized where people change both like sales strategy and product strategy based on the results and data from that dashboard.
Can you give me an example of one of the go-to-market or product strategies that were created or innovated because of
Mm-hmm.
this dashboard that you created?
So a really good example is we had a rebate pricing strategy. So prior to this, we had the MSSP program, which is basically how we sell through managed services partners. They had a very small rebate program, but what we saw when we built out a section of it for the dashboard is that we built filtering capabilities so people could see who's using the rebate, who's not using the rebate, and that showed us that when partners signed up and started using the rebate, like their sales numbers really went up. So it's a really powerful incentive. And so then we scaled that up to beyond the MSSP program to a variety of other routes to market. We saw similar success there. And so that was an example of where we took a um, piece of data that was highlighted on the dashboard and was able to give executive visibility into its early success and generate support for a pilot that was then enormously successful.
And then this specific KPI or metric or data was not or did not previously exist until you created this new dashboard on Tableau?
Yeah, so we previously weren't tracking that like we had the data existing being like these entities are using the rebate and overall these entities are making this much money, but we did not bring it together. And that was my insight when we were doing so this transition into the new comprehensive dashboard is, oh, we've also have a lot of these smaller programs that we haven't had dashboard visibility on. And I wanted to incorporate them so that we could see which ones are working, which ones were not.
Okay, cool. So let's move into the feedback section here. So
Sure.
this example is super powerful, right? And I think one mistake that a lot of people make is not choosing a powerful enough example to answer the question. So in this case, it was what was the most impactful or beneficial dashboard that you had created. So make sure that you do what Armand did and pick something that actually has a really, really good and big impact for the company that also can show off your technical skills, right? Whether that's Tableau, Power BI, SQL, etc. So that's the first part that he did really, really well is choosing the right example that can actually help you stand out from other candidates. Now, the second piece is, as you noticed with my follow-up questions, I needed to get one or
Mm,
two levels deeper from your
yeah.
initial answer, right? So your initial answer was very high level and broad. So it was, I
Yeah.
generated a new dashboard. I had to consolidate all previous dashboards because we migrated over to Tableau, and then I got feedback from the teams, and it was really well received. And then I built trainings afterwards, and I documented, and I received feedback. That was your answer. Super high
Yeah.
level, right? I didn't get any detail in terms of like, okay, what were some of the major KPIs that you felt were super
Mm,
innovative or creative that maybe didn't exist before until I asked you, right? And then maybe you could do a little bit of a before and after, showing me like before Amon did all this amazing work. This is what they used to have, right? And I was kind of probing there a little bit with like when I was like, can you give me a specific example of something that drove the product roadmap
mm,
or, you know, the go-to-market approach. So if you preemptively give me that instead of talking about, like how you got feedback and things, it's going to cover that by going through the story, but
okay.
that also helps you stand out. And then make sure you touch a little bit on the technical stuff that you did behind the scenes, right? Make it sound
Okay.
really complicated, right? Oh, we
Yeah.
were migrating over to Tableau, but we were, porting data over from X, Y, and Z systems. I had to clean the data. That took X, Y, and Z. In order to do that, I did blah 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 in SQL or something.
Mm,
It was supposed to take 5 people to do it, but we were understaffed that year, so I ended up working late and I did it all myself by automating blah
okay.
blah 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 blah. Right? Like, give me a little bit of that technical genius that you have about
Mm,
how you created these dashboards. And then from there, then you got to drive the point home as to like the so what. So from there, we then were able to provide recommendations to the business that had super powerful impacts. And this was a KPI that was not tracked before because X, Y, and Z business reason, right? And
okay.
then you can walk me through the strategy as to why you decided to actually calculate and generate this new KPI when no one at the company had done it before. Because as you mentioned,
Yeah.
the data already existed, but no one had presented this KPI to leadership, right? So that's
Yeah.
also a really big opportunity for you to stand out as a candidate, right? You're not just taking orders from the business, you're thinking critically and you're like, wait a minute, there's all this, partner rebate data that no one's tracking. Like, why aren't we doing that? Right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pieces in there, which is why this is an awesome story. There's a lot of pieces. When you add them all together, that's going to make this story super comprehensive.
Okay. So should I, because my initial thinking of sort of impact wise was just the like a lot of how it's measured at my last job when I built these dashboards was just like were stakeholders happy? So that's why I measured that impact. But you want to also talk, you think I should go straight to also talking about like a direct business decision, right? To make it more concrete.
Correct, especially when you're
Yeah,
applying for like business analyst, data
right.
analyst, less more
Makes
on the
sense.
modeling side, right? If this was like a pure BI role, then they wouldn't care so much about the business impact. But this is like a half and half, right? We're assuming.
Right.
So that's what they're going to care about. And then also just think about it from the interview perspective, right? If the ending of my story is, and then I got super good feedback and the users were happy,
Right. Yeah.
right? It's kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Does that make you the best candidate? No, because every candidate's going to be like, yeah, and the users were happy. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
CFO was happy. Yeah, and the
Right.
CEO said thanks. Right?
Yeah.
Like so I get it on a day to day, that's normal. But from an interview perspective, everyone has to think about this is an interview. It's kind of like an audition, right? Like what's going to really wow the judges, and
Yeah.
that's what people got to think about. And then yesterday when we were doing this boot camp with Albert, one of the questions that someone said was, "Well, Corey, isn't this going to make my answer really long?" Well, if you practice it and remove some of the unnecessary details and things, it will naturally be longer, but it's actually okay to have a longer answer if everything you're saying is really good and is getting the interviewer interested and wants to hear more,
Mm.
right? Which is different than like first I scheduled a meeting and then I asked for feedback on the dashboard. And then I got the feedback and then I got the feedback and then I sent out the meeting notes and then I implemented the feedback and then I had another right? Like that's not
Yeah.
useful
Yeah.
data. That's not gonna, like yes, it makes your story longer, but it doesn't make you a better candidate, right?
Right.
So it's okay to go a little bit longer if what you're adding is those things that we talked about. Okay, cool. All right. I don't want you seeing my next question here. Oh, and let me check the chat. If there's anyone who has questions for us, if there's any data analysts in the house and you did a recent interview and you had a tricky interview question, throw it in the chat and then we can practice that as well. Okay, next question. Okay, So Armand, as you know, this role is half data modeling.
Mhm.
So can you tell me about a really complex data model that you built?
Yeah, so I think a recent model that I built that had a big impact was a customer churn model. I built it in dbt, and what we did was I took a variety of metrics that we anticipated would predict customer churn based off of sort of just business experience and having worked with the data for a while. Um, Things like, so for example, like invoicing, have they paid their invoice on time? Have they logged into the product in a certain period of time? How often have they utilized it every day? Are they getting um, raising support tickets? And so then using that, I built a SQL model in dbt that assigned a point score for each of these metrics. And so, if you hadn't logged in, you get this many points and so on. Played around with a different variety of weightings and then created a model that would roughly bucket people into high risk, middle risk, and low risk, and then double check that to make sure that it was actually working. So my first iteration, for example, um, assigned, for example, like a something like 10% of tickets to high risk, and I looked backwards and saw that uh, like I would say not enough of it didn't cover enough of a percentage of the people who actually were churning. And so I needed to adjust one of the metrics. I was like, okay, it's probably a better predictor that we use invoicing as opposed to, login sessions, things like that. So I tweaked the model a little bit until I finally got an outcome where we had percentages accurate reflecting of like, okay, if I sign it low risk, the people in the past who were reflecting like that would be falling into that bucket were actually low risk of churn, medium risk, and high risk. We implemented that, and then going forward, we created an intervention that said that if somebody is showing indications of high risk, because we worked on the partnerships team, we have a partner intervention, and that reduced the amount of churn that they had by something like 20 to 25%, which is enormous savings for the company. A lot of revenue would have lost, things like that. So it's a really powerful impact.
Love it. And then what made this data model so complex?
I think what made it complex is just that we ended up building a lot of variables into it. And so we started with about 10, we ended up having about 30, and then sort of trying to make sure that the model was robust. And so we wanted to go back to long periods of time. There were periods of time where, like, if I just looked at, let's say, like last year's data, this model is pretty good at predicting who would churn and who would not, but we wouldn't go back 2 years. And because our business is rapidly changing, we wanted something that sort of stood the test of time. And so I was adding and removing variables and playing with the weighting for quite a while until we got something that worked really well.
Perfect. That's exactly what we should include
Woo.
in like with the normal answer, because that also makes you
Okay.
seem like a really great candidate, right? Like we started with 10, had to go to 30. Also, the same 30 will change every single year because our business was evolving so rapidly. It also shows that you have strong business acumen as well, right? You're not just
Mm.
a modeler or an analyst. You actually understand the business and you needed to account for that. So I think this is a fantastic answer. Everyone give Armand a round of applause. That was awesome. Okay, I think if there was anything to change, I would say, and this is really, really nitpicky, probably like I don't think it's gonna make that much of a difference, but you do say we a lot.
Okay.
Now, I know at like a lot of people say it because you want to show that you are a team player and that you give credit to a lot of people. But I would balance the amount of times you say we, especially when you're talking about a big decision or a directive that was being given. Because if you say we, my first instinct as an interviewer is, ooh,
Right.
Armand, that's not Armand's idea. That was Armand's manager's
Yeah.
idea. So try and balance that out, especially if it was
Okay.
your idea, right? It's okay to say,
Yeah.
and then I realized X, Y, and Z, or I had to
Okay.
account for X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
Because that shows the strategic thinking. But that's the only
Mm.
nitpicky thing. But just keep that in mind,
That's
especially
good
as you're
feedback.
interviewing at like, FANG companies and things like these little tweaks can make a big difference.
Yeah.
But overall, like I had nothing really else to comment on because that answer was great. Okay, okay, okay. Next question. Nothing in the chat, right? Yeah, okay. All right. So Armand, this role will work very closely with our product and eng teams as well. I know you
Hmm.
mentioned you've worked with some engineering and product teams before. So imagine you were coming in brand new to this company, supporting one of our product and eng teams. What dashboards and data do you think they would find most useful if you were having to build dashboards for them from scratch?
So for if can you say the teams again? Sorry.
Like our engineering and product teams.
Cool. So for product, the data that they traditionally need is combination of sort of like the revenue metrics and then the product utilization. Um, Primarily up to the product utilization, and so a variety of things like how much data is going through endpoints, how much are people logging in, what amount of the products are being turned on or not turned on, and then more granular data depending on the type of products. I worked in cybersecurity, and so we had for individual cybersecurity products, you'd have a zillion different metrics about like utilization and how they're being used, where people are getting stuck and stuff like that. And then depending on the type of product team, you'd be giving them different metrics based off of that, of just like how the product is performing with users. For engineering, it really depends on what they are working on. So like I worked with a data engineering team. And for them, I was building them dashboards sort of to look at performance of like various data lakes. It's sort of a bit of a meta thing, but like what are you know, how long is it taking to load various data sources? What are the data sources or data jobs that are performing really slowly, things like that. And so, yeah, those are the types of dashboards I'd built for both.
Okay, so far we've covered a lot of the key fundamental KPIs and metrics and dashboards
Hmm.
that these companies or that these teams would typically use. So since you've got experience in this sector, now I want you to go a little bit above beyond those table stakes and fundamental ones. What are
Hmm.
some KPIs or dashboards or data that you think these teams would also benefit from using that they may not have thought of after your first round of creation?
I think for product teams, one thing that they don't think about enough, in my experience, is the how the products are interacting with each other. And so, especially with, like Palo Networks, and we saw this at Calbright College, a lot of the customer stuff data would be very siloed. People would look at one product at a time, but there would often be cases of if we'd introduce a new product line, you would see dips of utilization of one product line because they were sometimes like cannibalizing each other, or there was user confusion where they thought because some of the products were similar that they should be doing one versus the other, or didn't know how to get them to work together. So that's something that I, in my time there, built out is connected dashboards, and so that people could see um, with similar sort of families of products how metrics are performing in coordination of each other. And I kind of got this insight because I initially wanted just to do a comparison if so people could say, oh, how's my product doing compared to other products? And then notice that when we looked at them chronologically, there would be patterns of dips around them, especially when you went into specific customers and you'd see, we'd introduce, you know, a new type of cybersecurity product, and suddenly usage of the first cybersecurity product would go down just as the other one was going up. And then they could intervene with the customer because there was a misunderstanding there. They thought it was like a replacement, but actually they work better when they were both utilized.
Boom, that was awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So I think if we could add that as part of your original answer, it would make
Okay.
it even better. And then, if possible, this because this is all hypothetical, imaginary, right?
Yeah.
Talk about maybe like how complicated that could be, though, in terms of trying to put it together. Like, what are some of the things in the back end or
Mm.
data that you want to make sure the company would need to make sure that they're tracking in order
Yeah.
to do that type of stuff, right? The more complicated you can make it sound, and then how you can provide solutions for that complicated mess would also help you stand out from a technical
Okay.
perspective.
Okay.
But these answers are super, super solid.
Okay. Thank you.
Super solid. Okay, let's get into some client management stuff now.
Sure.
Can you tell me about a time when you had to work with a very difficult client or business stakeholder and how you handled it?
So I think at Resistance Labs, because we were working with political campaigns, I did a lot of client management. I managed over 100 campaigns, and it is a sector known for its big egos and personalities. There are customers that could be like massive and would be very not demanding of your time, would be very understanding of your timelines and be very professional. And then there are folks who were you know, not paying a lot and had very small customer bases who had very small utilization, but would still be like very adamant. And there's just a couple principles you have to keep in mind is like one, obviously treat everybody with respect and dignity and professionalism. But then two is to make sure that you just are very clear for your expectations and your understanding. What I found was that uh, where I struggled initially was that if I didn't set a strong frame for how our relationship would go and communicate very clearly about so the timelines that people could expect, um, that then led people to sometimes be frustrated because they didn't have the same implicit understanding that I did. Um, and so I quickly learned there when I worked at Resistance Labs and carried that through the rest of my career is to just be very, very proactive about communication, about timelines, about what I will do or not do. And especially when I worked at Palo Alto Networks, because my role was supporting enormous amount of people in the ecosystems organization, the all the way down to channel business managers are sort of like the bottom of the rung to the chief partners officer. Um, all of those people theoretically could see my name on a dashboard and have a question. And it was really important that I be very, very clear with everybody about like what my turnaround could be, um, what I can or cannot answer, and became very disciplined about making sure to when, know when to say no, but do it in a kind and polite way of like, okay, this kind of request needs to go to this department or this department. No, this is the thing I should be doing, but here's the piece of that I will do, and here's what time I'll deliver it, and stuff like that. And so it's been a journey of learning a lot of sort of stakeholder management, but I think a combination of being really polite and kind, but also very clear about timelines and what I will do and not do has served me really well.
Can you give me a specific example from Palo Alto Networks of a very difficult client or business partner?
Yeah, so I'll anonymize it as much as possible. um, there was someone who my organization, they're from a department that we did not support, but they basically worked it was similar enough that they had convinced somebody from IT that we should actually be supporting them. And they'd already started building things, and I was put in a bit of an awkward position of where I had not agreed to something in the first place, but another stakeholder that I work with really closely, IT, had, and it was like kind of challenging to manage that. And so what I did was I set up a call, got everybody together, really clearly explained like, here's what I do and like what I'm defined as doing. Um, and then here's what IT does, what we're defined as doing. And then this person we were working with very clearly just wanted this thing like dashboard built. Um, did not have a clear understanding of like who was supposed to build it and also the amount of work required, to be very frank. Uh, and the way that I resolved that situation is like I made it essentially really clear that like we should not be the ones supporting it, but I understood who could help them with it. And they also helped them better get a better scope of it. And so when they went to that person, um, they were already set up for better success. And then that project ended up not having to follow my team's plate, but that I just checked in later to make sure that things were going smoothly, and it did get built for them. And and part of the things that the other team was thankful for was not only that I direct them correctly there, but also helped get some shape and scope of it. So everybody at the end was like as happy as they could be.
Okay, great. So this is obviously a stakeholder management, client management style question. And the best way to approach these is just to lead with a specific example,
Okay.
usually.
Yeah.
Now it's okay to give a little bit of context in terms of like in general first, how do you approach client management when they are being
Yeah.
difficult, et cetera, et cetera. You want to make sure that you know, are nice and kind, but also respect the boundaries of the business and business priorities, stakeholders, blah, 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 and then go into your example. Now, I know you did start with Resistance Labs when you were doing the campaigns, but
Hmm.
just keep in mind, and this is for everyone as well, try not to go too far back, right?
Okay.
If some, in general, if they're like, tell me about a time, blah, blah, blah. You don't want to pick something from the bottom of your resume, for example.
Yeah.
Ideally, if you want to stick within the last 5, 6 years, that's
Okay.
probably the best place. Obviously, the more recent, the better. But I would say, and that's why I kind of pushed you towards Palo Alto,
Makes sense.
if possible. And then the example you gave is good. It's a standard, I would say, like stakeholder problem for data analysts, right? A
Yeah,
different team has a request, they want you to build a dashboard, but it's not technically your team's responsibility, so you have to tell them, hey, that's not us, and then you direct them
yeah,
to the right place. So
yeah,
that in itself, I would say, is like a fine standard
yeah.
example. But every analyst that I've interviewed has had the exact same answer. So
Mm,
how can we make it better?
okay.
What, let's brainstorm. What do you think we could add to this story to help you stand out?
Uh, I mean, what I didn't mention the story because I don't want to. Again, I'm keeping this as vague as possible. It's just that they were very. It's very clear that the person understood that it was not supposed to be our job to do it, but they like could not get anyone to do it, and were trying to sort of bully their way into getting this thing done. Um,
And that's actually okay
that
to say, by the way, in an interview,
okay,
because
yeah,
you're not using their name. You're not being like
yeah,
John
yeah,
Smith, who sits on the third floor in Palo Alto Networks, right, on the go-to-market strategy team, came in, right? You're just saying there was a difficult
yeah,
stakeholder, but now you're adding context as to why they were so difficult, which is the point of the question, right? Because the skill
yeah.
they're testing is stakeholder management. So the
Well,
more difficult you can make them sound, the better you look, right?
I'm
And
just
I mean,
being careful because like this is going to be online, so I don't want
yeah, yeah, yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah,
But fair, yeah,
yeah.
okay. But like in a real job interview, you think like providing more of that detail would be good, right?
Of course, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then so giving a little bit more context as to why they were so difficult is one way to do it. And then also in the solution, right? So everyone's solution for this question is going to be the same because the question was, tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult stakeholder and how you handled it. So I know
right,
everyone's ending is, and then I handled it.
right.
So we can go one step further, right? You could talk about maybe how you prevented this type of thing from happening again. So you could talk about,
Mm,
and then I realized that there actually is a training gap between, the go-to-market team and the BI team. They believe that X, Y, and Z falls under my team's remit, but that's
yeah,
actually more of like a miscommunication of scope. So we led a training, I don't know, a month later, and we, blah 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 blah. Or I realized that this is a legitimate business gap, and then I created a business case to get headcount funding so that this other team could have the resources to support this team because they're working on a brand new go-to-market product, and the data shows that customers, were buying this product, so they had a really high growth rate, and we needed to support this go-to-market team, but we were short resourced. Who knows, right?
okay,
But like if we can
yeah,
go one step further, that's
yeah,
also going to help you stand out, right? Because everyone's
okay,
answer so far is going to be the same, right? There was
yeah,
someone that was difficult. I talked to them. We probably met in the middle for some solution, and then they were happy, right?
yeah,
So every candidate's going to have the same 4 steps. So
yeah,
if
yeah,
you can go one step further, step 5, step 6, right? That's also going to help you stand out.
okay,
Now, if you're thinking, well, Corey, in this particular example, all I did was point them to that team, and then that was it. Okay, that's okay. But now maybe I should think about a different example to
yeah.
share the next time someone talks to me about stakeholder management.
Well, what happened here was that I made sure that my friend IT understood in the future not that this is not what I'm supposed to get pulled into, and if they're unclear, they should come to me first and ask instead of like letting themselves kind of get trapped into this.
Yep.
So I think the nicer way to say it is like I worked with IT to better educate them on how to handle situations like this in the future and to make sure that they understood like prior to committing my team to anything, we're saying that anything was within our scope. If they were uncertain, they need to check with us.
Right, right. And then you could also flip this too, and then this will show your business acumen, right? So you could say, in addition to that, the reason why IT actually thought it was my team
Yeah,
was because X, Y, and Z, and they didn't want to upset this key director for the go-to-market
yeah,
team, and they didn't want to tell them no, which is very understandable. And the
yeah.
director was putting so much pressure that they needed to punt this to somebody ASAP because they felt like they were going to get in trouble. So for
Yeah.
those kinds of situations, what I actually felt would be best would be if me and my lead got to talk to it, we would have monthly syncs with the directors for
Mm,
all the go-to-market teams, and then we could get feedback on the existing dashboards and KPIs. Then IT would actually get less business requests for dashboards. And then that therefore allows them to circumvent IT and come to you, and then that allows you to better whatever. Redistribute resources, tell them that that's out of scope, blah, 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 right? But you can see
Okay.
how that also shows your business and stakeholder management skills,
Okay.
right?
Cool.
Cool. Okay. This is a very quiet chat today. No one's got questions for you or me. They're just totally relying on my ability to create awesome questions. Okay, let's go with. Okay. So as you know, in this role, you'll be working with both technical and non-technical teams. So how do you communicate technical topics and methodology to non-technical audience and business stakeholders?
So for most of my data analyst career, I would say particularly in Palo Networks, the job of a data analyst is exactly this. Like you're the mediator between technical teams like IT and then business stakeholders. Um, and so there's sort of three main things I found that were really useful for that sort of communication. One is to have very clear definitions of things and good documentation around it, which meant not just like getting IT and the business to define things properly. In the sense that, like on the IT side, we go into Salesforce, we go into BigQuery, we'd get the actual like definitions as in like the labels of the data. And then on the business side, you'd have to get a variety of data stakeholders, business stakeholders to define like what is our win rate? Do we all agree on that? If it's a MSSP deal, how is it tracked, etc. And so it does take a lot of work to get a set of definitions agreed upon and then documenting them. But that was a huge, huge, huge like measure of success because a lot of times when there was future confusion, people already had things they could reference. But also, if you got people together in a room, you could all look at one thing and say, "Okay, that's how we're gonna define things." The second level for sort of explaining technical things to a non-technical audience is being really thoughtful about what they need to understand versus like what they don't need to understand. As a a data analyst, a guy who likes to get into the weeds, like I actually do really like talking about like the how the SQL code was written or how the queries were optimized. But I understand that for the business, that's not the most important thing. They want to understand, okay, what does this metric actually mean for my bottom line, for my revenue? What does this metric mean for my performance, the predictions of it, things like that. And then finally, I would say that the last like third key to successfully communicating to non-technical audiences is checking for understanding. A lot of times people are afraid to speak up when they don't understand. And so you have to be very proactive about not just saying, hey, do you understand? You get it? But asking about specific things and saying, for example, I had a call a few months ago where I walked through a thing that I knew was complicated. And I said, okay, so is this sales motion being tracked by this like definitions that like make sense to you? Is that how you guys track the business? Can you explain to me in your own words how you guys track it? Something like that. And that worked really well.
That was perfect. That was awesome. So,
Ah,
for people who want to know why this answer was so good, number one, it was super well structured. You notice that Armand said, "Well, there's three things that I do to communicate technical topics to non-technical stakeholders." So right away, that already shows me that he's organized and strategic. Then he walks me through each three, and what you notice is Armand talks about different use cases and edge cases as well, about how his broad-reaching concept can be applied to multiple situations. So that's the other way where you can stand out as a candidate is when you can predict unusual cases or walk through like different options of how you would have to approach certain problems. So that's why Armand's answer was so excellent, and that's what everyone should do. So that was perfect. Uh,
yeah.
okay. And then you might have saw this question in the chat. Well, there's two of them. So I'll start with the first one. What do you do if they ask you at the beginning what motivated you to apply for this role, but for many times you don't remember because you've applied to so many open positions and all of them are relevant to our role. What do you say? So my advice here is hopefully you do a little bit of homework before you go into the interview. Look at what company it is, what the role is about, etc. And then do a little bit about what Armand did is talk about why they're excited about this company, in this case in Grok, and what their company's working on, maybe something in the news, their product X, Y, and Z. And then, of course, if there's something unique about the role that you like. So you know that in this case, it's half data modeling and half business analyst. You could talk about how you prefer a role that is that perfect balance, and then that gives you a chance to show off your skills about how good you are on the modeling side, right? You can talk a little bit about how that's perfectly aligned with your career goals, X, Y, and Z. You do not need to say, "Oh, I'm motivated to apply here because my boss sucks," or "Oh, I didn't get my promotion," right? Or "Oh, my company doesn't pay good." So just talk about how you can help them. And then the second question is, what if you are asked, do you have experience with a tool that you have not worked on? For example, you have worked with Power BI, but not Looker. How do you handle this kind of situation? Um, so it like what I would recommend, and I would love to hear Amon's point of view. So my recommendation is you talk about something similar, like if it's a data visualization tool, right? So for example, you use Power BI but not Tableau. You'll have to own up to it, right? Don't say that you have used Tableau when you haven't, but talk about how you use Power BI, how you had to ramp up on Power BI, and how you did that very, very quickly. You can talk about some of the more advanced or tricky things that you've done in Power BI to show them that you are proficient at it, and then talk about how little of a time it took for you to ramp up in that tool and become proficient. And then talk about you can, if possible, you can talk about well, and also you may be asking me this because in Tableau you're going to use it to do X, Y, and Z things. I'd I'd use the same, we use Power BI to do the same X, Y, and Z things. This is how I learned to do that. My first day on the job, right? Blah 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 blah. That's how I would do it. Any
Yeah.
recommendations, Armand?
No, that's exactly it. Like the in data analysis, the number of like data visualization tools is like constantly growing and changing. And like there's even at my old company, I learned this thing called Tableau CRM, which used to be Einstein Analytic, which now basically nobody uses. And so in data analytics, if you are not able to sort of flex to other visualization tools, you won't get anywhere. And so what I would say is that like I have extensive experience in like these specific sets of tools. In the past, when I've had to learn new tools, usually they're pretty fairly easy to ramp up because there's a lot of commonalities. I've done, I've like every dashboarding tool figuring out how to define your data, where your data is being pulled from, how to visualize that data, what kind of charts to be using for it. And then you learn it quickly by both like studying the relevant material, um, looking at like online courses, asking your manager, and really learning by doing everything. Every technical skill I've learned, I've done that way. It's just like doing a class, but then you're like building something, piecing it together, getting stuck and learning. So I'm getting distracted because my girlfriend's calling for a dog.
No worries. And then there is a question in the Q&A. It says, would like to get more context on how your data analyst role played or fit in within the marketing department in general, and can you break down the marketing aspects of how your data was fully utilized and deployed to optimize products? Yeah, I think she just wants a quick recap, Armand, of what,
Sure.
yeah.
So I worked for a variety of departments. Marketing was like a primary one, but I did work with them. They pulled in data. We used to pull in data using Marketo, which is sort of the primary platform for that, and then Salesforce to track like marketing campaigns. And my primary role in that was helping them figure out how to build like the data pipeline so that you could be looking at um, when partner interventions were useful because we did a lot of campaigns with partners. And so then we sorry, I got sorry, I keep getting distracted. Someone's yelling behind
No
me.
worries. No worries.
The question about the marketing, what was that? I don't see it on the chat.
Oh,
But yeah, so
it's in Q&A. It's not in chat,
oh
which
god,
is
okay.
why we didn't see it until now.
Uh, so basically, yeah, what I did was like I took the data from Marketo, put it into BigQuery, working with the data engineering teams, transformed it using DBT, and so that people could that and then put it into a Tableau dashboard so that marketing could see like what is the success rate of different marketing campaigns. And so if we did a marketing campaign with this partner, here's how much revenue earned over time, here's how many new opportunities were created because of it, and then compare the different marketing campaigns against each other.
And then Armand also supported like the product and partnerships and like go-to-market teams as well, in
Yeah.
addition to marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. Everyone, let's give Armand a huge round of applause. That was amazing. Well
Thank
done.
you. Thank you.
All right. And then, of course, if you want to volunteer, please contact me or Albert. We can sign you up for one of these. And then you can also check out my YouTube channel or Albert's YouTube channel as well. We'll put that in the chat right now.
This is really
And follow
helpful. Thank
Armand
you.
on Twitch, on Twitter
Okay.
or X.
Yeah. At Armand Doma on Twitter if you're curious.
We also have another question, Corey, in the Q&A. Are you able to read that?
How can you use AI to improve your skills? For a data analyst, I mean, I'd have to kick that to Armand.
So one of the things that I would say for AI that's really helpful for me was just learning really quickly. Like if you think about when you get stuck on something in the past, you kind of have to go in Stack Overflow and hope somebody asks a question similar to you, or you find somebody, talk to somebody. But here, like if I'm reading a bunch of material and there's like a small part of it I don't get, I can just stick that into Chat GPT and then like that, especially something I know I get weirdly stuck on certain things that other people don't. But I think because of idiosyncratic ways to learn, like AI is really good at that. It's also just very good at pumping out lots and lots of SQL quickly. So if I know, for example, I need to do, select from and then get average of this data from this table and then join it with like this other table, or write a bunch of like CTEs, like actually sitting manually writing it would take amount of time. I can just do that kind of sloppy description of like the code that I need, almost pseudocode, and it'll spit it out for me. So just like raw literal speed of churning out SQL code is really good at.
And if your company uses Google Cloud, you get Gemini built in, and you can actually do that natively within your own ecosystem and not give your data to
Yeah.
China. So
Oh my.
Do you work for Google?
Advertising.
I have no comment. I have no comment.
You can look them up on the
I
LinkedIn.
I have no comment. I have no comment.
Well done.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We do have openings moving forward for mock interviews. If you're a software engineer, actually, our software engineering mock interview, Feng Lam, is here in the attendees today. And Corey is also here to help us with our non-technical interviews. Reach out to me with your resume, also with a job description, and we can get you started. We've also got lots and lots of other events coming up, including events tomorrow and the day after. And we will look forward to seeing you very soon. And if you're looking for Armand's resume, just reach out to him on LinkedIn and go from there. All right, thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and we will see you all soon. Bye.